No joke. What happened to the joke? Cold open.
You stole my open.
Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, some Eagles aren't happy with Doug Peterson. Chase Young wants Tom Brady, and we are 90 minutes away from the Heisman. But we are going to begin today with news out of Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns coach, Kevin Stefanski, the DB coach, Jeff Howard, the tight ends coach, Drew Petzing, two players, wide receiver, Kadarius Hodge, I hope I got that name right, and a guard, Joel Bitonio, have tested positive for coronavirus. They will not coach nor play in the Browns' wildcard game Sunday night against Pittsburgh. Plus, the Browns have shut down their practice facility again. Wilbon, the head coach is out. Where does this leave the Browns?
On the verge of out. Very close to out. On the precipice of out. That's where it leaves them. It's the playoffs, man. And Tony, this is the world we live in. You and I, been saying this like everybody else since March. And so the Cleveland Browns, it seems so much crueler to Cleveland, given that the team hasn't been in the playoffs in 18 years. They get there for the first time in that long. And now they have all these obstacles in the way of simply getting out on the field to play. The facility was closed before last Sunday's game for at least a couple of days. And now, so you're saying they can't prepare for a hated rival, no less. A playoff game, a hated rival in the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're not going to have your head coach. There's so many things in the way, Tone. I don't think the Browns are so great that they will overcome these things this weekend.
Yeah, so I get this. I understand why the NFL wants to play. I understand if you postpone to Monday or Tuesday, then the winner is at a competitive disadvantage the next week. And I don't know if this is as important as what happened with Denver, where they had no professional quarterback that they could turn to. But it feels crippling to me. The coach orchestrates the whole show, and he's not going to be there. You miss other coaches. You miss some players. The only thing that Cleveland has left, it's 18 years they wait. This happens to them. The only thing they have left, I guess, is the sympathy of the entire country. I don't think they're going to need motivation to beat Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh is a division and hated rival, and Pittsburgh has to be fair. They lost 3 in a row fairly recently. But, Mike, like you, it's the worst kind of luck. It's just the worst.
It is, Tony. And I thought that Mike Tomlin, for an opposing coach, I listened to Mike Tomlin earlier today, and I thought he was, as he often is anyway, so eloquent and so practical and so common sense, but yet insightful about what the league is facing, what its players and coaches are facing, in the greater context, what the world is facing. And he just said, but this is what we've got. And what do you do? Well, you're going to have a team standing by like an understudy on Broadway to come in if the Browns weren't able to play. I don't know what you do. You have to proceed. But, man, it's hard to be the Cleveland Browns right now. We move to a report in the Philadelphia.
I got to tell you this. Give me a second. Whoa. Stop for a second. I was amazed that the NFL got through the season the way they did on time. I was amazed.
Me too.
And that led me to believe, Mike, that they were going to get through the playoffs well. I lulled myself into believing they would get through the playoffs. And now I want to tell you what I worry about. I worry about the championship games, and I worry about the Super Bowl. Because you cannot have a valid champion if one team in either of those games is not at full strength because of the virus.
Yeah.
So I do worry about that.
Yeah, understandably, Tone. We move to a report in the Philadelphia Inquirer that 2 Eagles defensive players had to be held back on Sunday from confronting Coach Doug Peterson after he pulled Jalen Hurts in favor of third stringer Nate Sudfeld in the fourth quarter. The Inquirer says many Eagles players and coaches were shocked and outraged. And Senator Jason Kelce went to Peterson to ask, why are you making this move in a 3-point game? Tone, do you think Peterson's decision weakens his position as head coach?
So I watched a lot of television this morning, and I watched particularly former athletes, football players, who were screaming, it's Doug Peterson's team. He can do whatever he wants. And yes, that's true. But there are consequences for everything that we do. And one of the consequences here might be that he loses that team. Doug Peterson, altered the integrity of that game. Doug Peterson, didn't give his players a chance to win. If players play, they want to win. Look at the Jets. They want to win. They are risking life and limb with every single play they're out there, and they did not have that chance. You had Jalen Hurts trying to prove that he's a pro quarterback. You had him in a crunch time situation in a 3-point game, something he needs to show you he can win, and you don't let him win. You put in Nate Sudfeld, a guy you know can't do anything because he hasn't played a down all year.
Tone, the people who have my ear more than former players in this instance are current players. And the current players, the Eagles, a lot of them have weighed in publicly, and you know they've all weighed in privately, and we haven't heard any dissent. We haven't heard anybody say, yeah, I got my coaches back on this one, because they don't. So I'm brushing aside former players, many of whom I consider the experts on the game, the experts today on the game, but not in this situation. And I think if they stepped back into their role as players, they would have felt the same way. You and I have been in a lot of locker rooms in our lives when we know the coach has lost the team. And players have said to our faces, whether it was on or off the record, this guy doesn't have the team anymore. That seems to be the case with Peterson at this point, Tony. Maybe he can get the team back. Maybe he can't. Maybe there will be circumstances we find out in the coming days that leak out of that locker room and off that sideline that suggest that Peterson can get that team back. From where we're standing and looking in right now, I don't see it.
Yeah. So this is Philadelphia. This is not a rosy, happy city when people lose. I'm not even going to get into what Joe Judge said because that is irrelevant here. This is what Peterson faces. He won a Super Bowl, so maybe he gets a pass for a while. But I got friends, I got Ron, I got Ted in Philadelphia, and they're furious with this. It's his mess. It's Peterson's mess. Just as Carson Wentz is Peterson's mess. Now Carson Wentz is just pouting somewhere. So I think he used up the Super Bowl card. And I think if they're no good next year, you could see a coach and a GM go, because this feels like rebellion to me. I will move on.
It does to me too.
Chase Young, the Washington football team's fabulous rookie defensive end, could be seen and he could be heard after Washington beat Philadelphia, enthusiastically shouting, quote, "Tom Brady, I'm coming. I want Tom," unquote. This was in reference to Washington's playoff matchup against Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, winner of 6, count them please, 6 Super Bowls. Wilbon, has Chase Young bitten off more than he could chew?
Maybe not. This storyline has made this the most attractive game to me over the weekend because it involves Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
And for us, it involves Chase Young, who is local to Washington, D.C., not just the Washington football team, but a kid who grew up there, who wore those colors by whatever name. And, Tony, here's what I'm thinking. My first thought was, oh, my God, don't poke the bear. Just don't poke the bear. Don't poke Tom Brady. But my second thought is this. If Chase Young is some part Lawrence Taylor and or Reggie White, he can say what he wants to, and Tom Brady may be battered and bloodied by late Sunday night. Because if he's one of those two guys, and Tony, there are hints that he could be in that mold of Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White. Those are the two guys I think of who you'd walk through an alley and not care about whoever else was in there. So Chase Young, we'll see, but it's a hell of a storyline now.
So let's give it a little bit of context. Bruce Arians said, he heard the comments, he said Chase Young is a great player, but sometimes you got to watch out for what you wish for. Okay, Tom Brady I think Chase Young was 1 year old when Tom Brady entered the NFL. Tom Brady has been in 41 playoff games. Chase Young, the goose egg, to this point, hasn't been in any. So you ask yourself, why would he say it? Well, he would say it because for the last 6 or 7 years, he's wanted to be a professional player in the NFL on the defensive side. And what do they want to do most? They want to sack the best quarterback. And throughout his lifetime, Tom Brady has been the best quarterback. So he wants to put the GOAT on his can. So we will see if this happens. This is, as you know, Mike, the two leading voices on the Washington football team, Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, are defensive guys. They can't score. They got a one-legged quarterback. They can only score if they score on defense, and that is a great young defense. And yes, we will see. We will see.
Tony, the one thing I worry about is that the officials, now that they've heard this, and they can say they're not aware, they'll be aware. they're going to go to such lengths to protect Tom Brady that it could create an imbalance in this game. Because the name of the game used to be kill the quarterback, whoever the quarterback was. And a guy like Chase Young,
right?
Again, I'm going back to Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White for a reason. Because they killed the quarterback and nobody threw a hanky and said 15 yards because he hit him too hard. That didn't happen. Chase Young, if he can channel those guys. And by the way, he didn't say that in an interview. He said it in the natural setting of running off a field, saying, give me who's next up. I love what I've seen of this kid so far.
Tom Brady in the last 4 games has 12 touchdown passes and 1 interception. He's made a living for 20 years embarrassing defensive players who have tried to poke at him. He'll have an eye out on number 99, and if number 99 comes near, he's throwing it right into the ground. You know, that's the way he's going to work until he can throw a touchdown pass over him. Let's take a break. Coming up, the Heisman Trophy ceremony begins in about 75 minutes. Does Devontae Smith really deserve it over a quarterback?
And should the Dolphins already look to replace Tua?
Nobody loves our viewers more than I do, so I declare a second straight day of email.
Stunning.
You get the first one in here. This is
development,
long, Wilbon.
Okay.
Regardless of who wins the Heisman tonight, are you still convinced that Trevor Lawrence is the best football player in college football this season?
Tony, I'm a little less convinced. Because, you know, he wasn't great in the biggest game he played last season. He certainly wasn't great the other night in the playoff game where his, Clemson Tigers got their butts kicked by Ohio State. So I know there's a body of work, Tony, and there's 2 previous years, and there's a national championship. The thing is, he's 2 years removed from his very best work. I love him. But he's 2 years removed from that freshman season when he played his best football. So I don't know. They're going to poke and prod and test these guys and have pro days and all other junk, and half the scouts aren't going to pay any attention to what they saw on the field for 3 years. I'm less convinced than I have been.
I like the fact that you talked about the body of work. It would be remarkable to me if somebody this great over 3 years never won it at all. I think he's the best quarterback. I think Devontae Smith may be the best football player out there right now. I think that Mac Jones is the most efficient quarterback. I mean, Mac Jones reminds me of Bart Starr. He doesn't make any mistakes. He's incredibly accurate. You don't know how much of Devontae Smith is Devontae Smith and how much is Mac Jones. But having
I'm
said
betting
that,
on Devontae Smith.
Trevor Lawrence is going Smith. I will tell you this. Trevor Lawrence is the best player in terms of what the pros are going to look for. And he's going to go to an outpost, and he's going to go to a place where they tarped over seats for a number of years, and maybe he'll bring a big-time coach with him, and maybe it'll work. I don't know. Here we go. Should the Dolphins draft a quarterback with the number 3 pick?
This seems so absurd, considering the Dolphins just went through the previous offseason with what to do, whether to pick Tua, whether to pick this guy, what to do with the pick at 5. You know, Tony, I know that the GM of the Dolphins, Chris Greer, has come out and said that Tua is their starting quarterback going into next season. I'm not paying any attention to that. How the hell do we know what is relevant in January pertaining to September? We don't. And every year this happens, some coach says, he's my starter. And then they make a deal, they trade, they sign a free agent, and they get rid of that guy. So I'm paying that no attention. I would think they'd find out what they got with Tua. He played pretty well in their wins, even though he had a bad last couple of weeks.
Yeah, here's my feeling. I watched a lot of television today, and I didn't just watch former football players screaming about the Eagles. I watched Mel Kiper, and he said this guy had a very serious injury, and he hasn't had enough time to come back from a very serious injury. So, no, you don't bounce him. He's 6-3 as a starter. Maybe his arm strength isn't that great because maybe his hips aren't allowing him to throw the way he used to, because I think the statistic is he's 29th in downfield passing. He had Ryan Fitzpatrick coming off the bench except against Buffalo, where they couldn't put him in because he had the virus. It seemed to be working pretty well that way. I would give the kid another year because Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, they're not Trevor Lawrence. Nobody's tanking for them like they tanked for Tua. That's it.
They might
I don't
be.
know.
Might
No,
not
I don't
be a
think
good
so.
decision.
If we didn't get to your email today, kids, it's because it wasn't good enough. So let's take one last break before we get out of here. Still to come, Jerry Jones, your boy, Wilbon, weighs in on Dak Prescott's leverage.
And could Jason Garrett be a head coach in the NFL again soon? That's worse than getting Dak his money.
What is this, first take? Are we just
sounds
doing
like it.
Cowboys all the time? Is that what we're doing?
I vote
Get this outta
no,
here.
and I know you do too.
I do too. Happy time, people. Happy 96th birthday, Lou Carnesecca. That's right.